I have 5:30. I'd like to convene this meeting of the San Lorenzo Valley Water District Board of Directors for February 6, 2025. Jen, will you take the roll, please?
Yes. President Smalley.
Here.
Vice President Lane. Here. Director Hill.
Here.
Director Foltz.
Here.
And Director Logay.
Here.
All right, show me the other one.
Okay, great. Oral communication. I see nobody in the room, and I see one attendee who should be promoted, Barbara Brenner.
BTV, can you please promote Barbara Brenner?
And I see Jane Gray. Does anybody from the public want to address the board in an oral communication, limiting it to 3 minutes for items that are in the closed session, being the general manager discussion? Seeing none in the room, none online, we can then transition to the closed session. And as usual, go to the cone of silence room.
CTV, we're going to leave the meeting for an hour. I'll see you at 6:30.
Okay, I see that we have 6:30. I'd like to reconvene this meeting of the Board of Directors for the San Lorenzo Valley Water District for February 6, 2025. Jen, would you take roll again, please?
Yes. President Smalley.
Here.
Vice President Lane. Here. Director Hill.
Here.
Director Foltz.
Here.
Director Logay.
Here.
All right, you've got everyone.
Okay. We have nothing to report out from the closed session. We will be reconvening the closed session after we complete this open session of the meeting.
Copy.
So.
And okay, never mind. Go ahead.
Okay. With that, any changes to the agenda, John? Okay. Oral communications. This portion of the meeting is for members of the public to speak on any topic that's not on the agenda tonight, but that is within the purview of the district. And speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Does anybody want to speak? I see no hands up online and one individual here in the room. I see nobody, so we will continue then. Presentations of the local hazard mitigation plan.
Yeah, so we have our consultant that has been working on our local hazard mitigation plan. He's here to give a presentation about our draft, our public review draft of the local hazard mitigation plan that we have released for public review. So Lee.
Good evening, Chris. Do you want to share slides or do you want me to try from here?
You should be able to from there, Lee.
Okay.
I'd have to activate.
I got a soundtrack.
And hopefully everybody can see that.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Can you put it into presentation?
If I do that, I can't see you, but I can try and put it into presentation mode.
It makes it a little bigger. Yeah. Yeah. For my old eyes that can't see very well.
Would it be helpful if we present it instead, please?
Why don't you go to the second slide because it has more words. Okay.
How about that? Can you see that?
That's good. It's great.
Okay. My eyes aren't particularly young either. I understand. Well, first of all, thank you for having me tonight. We're going to talk about the hazard mitigation plan. This is the first one the district's done. We're going to give you an update on the planning process. We'll talk about some of the mitigation activities. I don't think we want to go into great detail or we'll be here all night. We'll talk a little bit about next steps and we'll give you an opportunity to ask questions. So the objectives are to do just what I said, update you on the project status, review the timeline, look at the mitigation activities that are in the plan that we've selected with input from the water district staff and from the public and some neighboring jurisdictions, and to talk a little bit about how we've done public engagement as part of this process. And please stop me if you have any questions. I can get going quickly. So what is hazard mitigation? It is a concerted effort to reduce or eliminate risk from the hazards that exist in the district that can affect your facilities and, more importantly, your customers. We look at natural hazards, earthquake, fire, flood, and we look at man-made hazards. We don't have to do man-made hazards, that's not required by FEMA, but man-made hazards are severely impacting districts, special districts, water districts. Climate change is happening. Cyber attacks are real and occur frequently. So what goes into a hazard mitigation plan? We do an analysis of the district. We put boilerplate in there like purpose and scope. And then we look at the hazards that the district faces and we assess the risk, usually in terms of dollars, because we're looking at risk to facilities. We look at risk to people. We can put a number on injuries and deaths, but we don't do that. Once we have developed an idea of the hazards that you face, we develop mitigation projects to try and reduce potential losses. And we'll talk mostly tonight about those mitigation projects. And we want to come up with concrete projects that you can have an engineering analysis done, you can develop a study, you can come up with what we call a shovel-ready project. And then the reason you do that, we'll get to in a little bit, but you want to have actionable projects. And then we engage the public. We ran a survey online with social media accounts pointing to how to get to the survey. We've put material on your webpage. We've gone to the senior center and talked to folks there. And we put copies of the plan and brochures about how to contact us at key locations like libraries and at the district headquarters. So why do hazard mitigation? Well, all I have to do is say 2021 CZU fire. Hazards are causing disasters and the disasters are getting worse. What's happened in Los Angeles is absolutely devastating. There's reasons for that. We're not going to go into that in detail, though we do address climate change throughout the hazard mitigation plan. More people live in hazard-prone areas. People in general, not everywhere, tend to be less resilient than they were decades ago, and the cost of disasters are increasing. So how does the district benefit from having a hazard mitigation plan? The Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000 requires that any jurisdiction that wants to get FEMA grants have an up-to-date hazard mitigation plan. And there are literally billions of dollars in FEMA grant, from building resilient infrastructure in communities, which is called the BRIC grant, which has $1 billion, to hazard mitigation program grants that come from money that FEMA provides above the cost of restoration for public assistance projects. We looked at your hazards. We did a fairly quantitative approach. We did a risk ranking based on several factors with weighted rankings. And the ones in red are the ones we decided were the most likely to affect you. Climate change. Earthquake is always a 5,000-pound elephant in the room. Wildland fire. Though some of them also are fairly close. Severe storms, drought, and flood. So these are the rankings we gave the hazards because we were required to do that analysis to meet the FEMA requirements. We picked 30 mitigation activities. That's a lot. They're wide ranging from conducting training to infrastructure improvement. We didn't have to go and update your previous mitigation activities because this is your first plan. Now, I'm not going to go through all of the mitigation activities. There's 30 of them. You can see this is very dense text, but some of them are to replace or repair fault crossings of lines, pipelines, where you can install flexible piping and fortified connections. There's a number of the mitigation activities that address the recommendations that came from the 2021 post-fire recovery plan, such as hardening reservoirs or tanks, making above-ground piping made of metal, clearing hazard-prone trees in the Ben Lomond watershed and Felton Empire grade watershed properties. Look at the trees that are in the watershed areas. Everybody understands that eucalyptus trees are essentially Roman candles. Establish defensive zones, work to develop a floodplain management plan. And there's a number of them. Upgrade your SCADA system with the latest security patches. Replace the water tank at Felton Heights with a steel bolted water tank. Work with Santa Cruz Health to develop communicable disease and public health emergency protocols for inclusion in your district's emergency response plan. Work with Santa Cruz Water District to integrate with them so that you can get a copy of the Newell Creek Dam emergency action plan because you guys are in the inundation zone. And again, I'm not going to go through all of these. Chris told me I should be fast and done in about 10 minutes, but you can see we have 30 well thought out, actionable hazard mitigation items. We don't say things like make the public more aware of hazards and how they can prepare for them. That's pretty generic and not particularly helpful. So our next steps, we're getting public review as we speak because we've placed the plan and the brochures that go with it. We've already completed the survey. We've gone to the senior center. We will document the public engagement process. FEMA requires that there be significant public engagement. The reason we went to the senior center was we looked at the demographics of the district, and you don't have what we call traditionally underserved populations other than older populations. And I fit in that bill. And that's the reason to go to the senior center. You have a fairly homogeneous or population. So with that, are there any questions? Is there anything that I can do to explain hazard mitigation and why you have a hazard mitigation plan?
Okay. Lee, thank you for that. First, we'll go to the board to see what questions board members have about this. Alina?
No, I appreciate going through this. I think it's absolutely necessary, to make sure we're prepared for the next disaster. This didn't include that survey that we put out to the public. This is separate.
No, the survey that went out will be included as part of the plan. We got the results of the survey. We use those results to help select the hazards and to inform the mitigation activities. We will put a summary of the results of the survey into the plan, and we'll do that as part of the public outreach documentation.
Okay, and so when will we be able to see the full plan together? When will that be available?
It's available now.
Oh.
We have a public review draft that is available on your website and at key locations. And Chris would be happy to email you one, I'm sure.
There is
Okay.
a link to it
Yeah,
in
we
the
definitely-
agenda as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I just thought you said he was going to, so I thought it wasn't. All right, that's all I have.
Okay, Brian?
I looked at the plan. I found it to be well organized and well written and intimidating, frankly. The roster of disasters that we get to live with here, potential disasters. The my only suggestion or request would be to try to do some careful cross checking. The plan referenced the post fire plan extensively, but there are, I believe, other plans that the water district is working to implement that have projects called out that may have a strong disaster preparedness, resilience element to them, which I didn't see clearly articulated. One example would be the 2021 master plan and the fire flow priority list. Clearly, that has relevance for addressing wildfire. If we can get that list in this plan, that may increase the likelihood that all of those component projects could be funded with a FEMA block grant or something along those lines. And maybe there are others. It's great to see conjunctive use in there, for example. But just some double checking, because that list, I think, becomes quite important when it comes time to ask for funding, not just from FEMA, but other agencies as well. That's all I got. Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
So I'm concerned here that we have a process to look at this from a point of view of prioritizing these, because this is a big mouthful to bite off. And there's a lot of money involved in mitigating. And so I think we need to look very carefully at when can we do each of these mitigations, what are they going to cost, and how far out is it before we work our way through the plan, because it could be quite a few years.
And I will clarify that we are not required, we're not beholden to any of these mitigations. It simply is a kind of wish list of things that we would like to do.
Yep.
And it kind of provides those as potential avenues for grants so that we can actually carry out those projects.
I understand that. I'm just looking at this and saying there's quite a few years worth of work there at the pace at which we're capable of working.
If I can jump in, these plans are required to be updated every 5 years. So this plan, once it has been adopted by the board, is a 5-year plan. It should be reviewed and updated on an annual basis, but we look at the projects as occurring over the next 5 years, and we list them as short-term, medium-term, or long-term in that long table that I showed you. And we try to give our best estimate of a dollar value, under 100,000, 100,000 to $1 million, over $1 million.
Thank you.
Bob?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, unfortunately, there isn't enough money available to do all of these things as much as you would like to do them. And I think that is where you start looking for grant opportunities or other leverage opportunities. And as you're doing the infrastructure improvements that we do have in our plan, that we also take that opportunity to see how we can enhance the resilience. You know, I was in favor of metal pipe on top of the ground for one of our raw water supply lines, but the board decided not to do that. That was for me a really, because I was interested in resilience. Whether or not it was practical or possible, I don't know that we did a final decision on that, but it might be something we might want to revisit, because plastic pipe's going to burn. The other part of that is also, what is the effect of that? Okay, so plastic pipe burns. Does it cost half as much to put in new plastic pipe as opposed to what it would cost originally to put in metal pipe? So there's, I think, a secondary set of analysis that might have to be done on some of these projects. I also think we need to be really clear about fire flow. The fire flow that we're going to be doing can help support a wildfire, but it is primarily targeted at dwellings and that kind of fire. That's not to say we shouldn't do it. Of course, we should do that. It's absolutely a core part of what I've advocated for my entire time on the board. But we also need to be honest with ourselves and the community about the scope of what our activities can actually support. The CZU fire was fought with supporting water from us, but it was not fought exclusively with the water that we had. Again, let's be really careful about setting expectations for the community that are large. I do a lot of work in cybersecurity. So for me, I understand and I've seen the devastation that a cybersecurity attack can do. I understand it wasn't, excuse me, ranked very high, but I can tell you when it occurs, it goes immediately to the top of the list. And regrettably, there's a tendency for some of these hackers to go after smaller organizations that they perceive to not have a sophisticated cybersecurity mechanism in place. So, for example, for a lot of our Gov clients, we recommend going to GovCloud. We recommend going to systems that are not proprietary, so you have a little bit more flexibility there in vendor selection. Our SCADA system, for example, we may want to look at getting a grant to redo the SCADA system into something that's less proprietary, because in the case of a lot of our vendors here, we're kind of stuck. So those are things that I think need to be talked about in the plan. I didn't see a lot in there about that kind of specifics, but I think it's worthwhile taking a look at. Chris, when is the closing date for public comment, or is it already closed?
We don't exactly have a set final date. We're trying to kind of see what the interest is and if it keeps rolling. But yeah, we do not have a final date set yet.
Okay. I have a number of more detailed comments to make, but I don't want to do it here. So I wanted to make sure I could do it in a timely fashion, that we weren't sort of run up against a deadline like tomorrow or something like that. Okay, great. Thanks. I think it's a really good piece of work. I like the quantitative assessment. I think that really brings a lot of clarity to things and allows you to look at things in a more structured fashion. So please keep that up. Thanks.
Okay. First question I have is similar along the lines to what Jeff asked, prioritizing. I see 30 mitigation activities that we might be pursuing. I'd like to get some guidance in the plan as to how to prioritize these. Because I think having that long laundry list overwhelms most people with, well, where do I start with this? Do I start with number one on the list?
And if I can jump in one more time, we haven't completely finished the plan. We've got a public review draft.
Right.
What we want to do is get input like we've received so far tonight. We'll go back and look at those 30 mitigation activities and maybe add some or change them or make them more detailed. Once we have a good list, we go through another quantitative process to prioritize them. We look at about 12 different factors.
That's what I'm seeking with all of those 30.
Now, there's already a priority column in there, just high, medium, low.
Right.
But that can obviously further refine.
Okay. And then Chris, you said that we don't have a deadline yet for public comment, but how long has it been out for public comment at this point?
Like a week and a half.
I'd say a couple of weeks.
Okay. So typical is 45 days for something like this?
I'm not sure if there's a statute of like what you need to do. I would say at least a month, and then
45 to 60
is normal for most things within the public arena like this that seek public comment. Most environmental documents, it's in that 45 to 60 day time frame. So I would encourage us to set something. Because otherwise, I can take as long as I need to. So get that out there, put a timeline on it. And then, I see I think 5, 6 people, attending remotely and one here in the room. So 7 members of the public are hearing this. Do you plan to bring this to the environmental committee?
I can, yeah.
Well, it's a question. There's 2 members of the environmental committee here now being board members that will have already heard it. But the 3 committee members of the public, I see as just one more avenue to try to get word out to the public. And then anybody else from the public who happens to have more of an environmental perspective typically attends that meeting. So I think that would be an appropriate venue. The similar length. I think the length of this was perfect. What he said, to allow us to get to questions.
Right.
That's what I want to.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, I can bring it to the environment committee. I will also note that we've had a pretty good social media push about this. We've had at least a couple of posts. So hopefully we're getting it out.
Are you getting responses?
We are not really getting too many responses.
I think, Chris, we should mention the survey, though. We got almost 300 survey responses with dozens and dozens and dozens of comments. And Chris has a copy of all the comments.
That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so there are people responding to the survey then.
The survey.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Mark,
Good.
if I can also interject. There's a whole raft of neighborhood groups in the San Lorenzo Valley on Facebook and those places, if you contact the administrators of those places for something that's not overtly political, of which this isn't, and is neighborhood and community oriented, which this is,
yes,
they'd be more than happy to usually post something on those neighborhood sites.
I agree.
And you will get thousands of people looking at them immediately, where I know we've improved our Facebook following, but it's not as much as, for example, BCN, Boulder Creek Neighbors, and Ben Loma Neighbors, and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Can I ask one more quick question?
Sure.
I know that we had a lot of public comment that had come in and talked about the universal locks on our roads for firefighting, and I don't see that anywhere in the 30. And just to note that.
Okay. All right. So we've had a first round of board comments. I'd like to go out to the public now. We can go back, see if there's any final comments. The members of the public, any questions about this hazard mitigation plan approach? I see no hands up online. I see nobody here in the room. I take that as nobody wishing to comment then. I think we are good on this presentation then. Lee, thank you. Thank you for a succinct presentation for us. That obviously generated a lot of good questions here from the board. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time, and you folks have a good evening.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Chris. Lee. Okay. Let's see. City of Santa Cruz project update.
Yep.
You can hear me great. Thank you for having me. Heidi Lippenbach, Water Director for Santa Cruz. I've been the Water Director for 1 year. I've worked with the City of Santa Cruz for a little over 25 years. I'm happy to come up and meet you all. I was meeting with John and Garrett a couple weeks ago, and as newer staff to the district, and got to introduce myself, and I'm really happy to be here with you today. I wanted to cover a couple things. One is just introductions, also talk about some big projects that the city has coming into construction. I'm not sure which way we're going yet.
It's not convenient for you.
If you're more comfortable just turning that
it's not locked in
phase
place.
1.
Yeah.
put your back to the other one.
I'm gonna put glasses thing, right? I was like, wait, put your glasses on. I can go ahead and get started. And the second slide, please. To introduce, the city, I'm not sure how familiar you all are with the city of Santa Cruz Water Department. Just briefly to put some of our projects into context, talk about supply augmentation and conjunctive use with your district as well as others, and then areas of current and ongoing collaboration. I think the next couple slides are going to be probably pretty familiar to your district. The city of Santa Cruz is nearly all surface water. There's times of the year outside of summer when we are 100% surface water. We do take water, as you know, from the San Lorenzo River, both in Felton and in Santa Cruz. And the water that we take from Felton, we pump up to Loch Lomond. We also have 4 streams up the coast that, as you can see, these are average numbers. We take about 15%, take some from Loch Lomond, and then the rest from groundwater in our what for us is the Mid-County Groundwater Agency in Live Oak. These are the water rights that we have here, because this will be important later, are only on the San Lorenzo River and Mill Creek. Our North Coast sources are all pre-1914 water rights, so they're treated a little bit differently. Our oldest source is from the 1860s at this point, which is just emphasizing the point that, like your district, we have a lot of infrastructure improvements to do to make sure that we're managing our resources well. So this slide is showing annual water flow through a meter on the San Lorenzo River, and we've used this for decades, since the 1920s, to really understand and try to predict what our water year is going to be. Our old classification system was 4 categories: critically dry, normal, and wet. We're shifting to a 5-year, and I won't get into that tonight, but we are shifting to a 5-year to get more granularity around it. Again, I think like your agency, we've seen some historical patterns that we could rely on. We have a system built around those historical patterns in terms of being able to capture the water in Loch Lomond for storage and rely on a more consistent, steady rainfall pattern so that we have water in our flowing sources for an extended period of time. So that keeps us on our flowing sources before we have to go to Loch Lomond. And historically, that's been how we've managed our water system. And of course, as you can see on the right-hand side, the red and yellow just become a lot more frequent. So what we used to be able to understand and predict and how we used to be able to manage our system is no longer reality any longer. Next slide. I like to show this slide. It's a very busy slide, but I'm going to point over here. Again, the same time frame nearly on the bottom. I think what's important to note is this is our population in Santa Cruz growing. I believe this blip was COVID, so it's a bit of an anomaly. And then our water production. So what is our demand? And we are definitely on the downward trend. When I started, it was back in 19 here. And at this point in time, we were predicting in our urban water management planning that we would go from 4,400 million gallons a year. We were predicting in that plan up to 6,000. And now we're at 2.4, projecting up to 2.9. And the demand that we see today, the production that we see today, as you can see, is similar to what we had back in the 1960s. So like everybody, we're not seeing the demand that we had anticipated, but kind of relying on that previous slide in terms of, because some might look at this and say, well, then you couldn't have a water supply problem because your demand is so low. But it's really that variable climate that's having a impact on all of it. Next slide, please. And this is just to point out the kind of a zoom into the demand from the previous slide, where our demand is constantly decreasing from the 2000s at 80 gallons per person per day, and we're now at 43 gallons per person per day.
Is that a result of conservation or?
This is conservation. Would you go back? Conservation for sure. Like every agency, we've really implemented strong conservation. And we've never, these are the droughts that we've seen in the seventies and the eighties and more recently in the 2000s, and we just aren't rebounding to the degree that we thought we would.
Every time you have a drought, it goes down and never comes
It
back.
doesn't feel like, yeah.
I should have prefaced, I would prefer that we hold
Sure.
questions.
Okay.
Finish the, we can go back to any one of these slides.
And I have
So,
slide numbers in case that's helpful.
right. But
Yeah.
please continue,
Great.
because often I find that you're answering a question on the next slide or the one after that, of course. So, thank you.
Yeah, I think they're skipped ahead a few.
Okay, next, yeah, perfect, slow. The city is still, I don't know how much you've, read or researched the city's pursuit of supply augmentation, but it does date back to, I think, the last source that we brought in, which was, Felton Diversion, so in the seventies. These are the projects or programs really that we're continuing to pursue conservation and management. I bolded the ones that we can talk about tonight briefly because they really have to do with areas where we can collaborate on these. So we'll talk a little bit about ASR, water transfers, and then modifications to our water rights and how that's going to really help facilitate work amongst us all. So the city is part of two groundwater sustainability agencies, the Mid-County Groundwater Agency and the Santa Margarita Groundwater Agency, as you know. We are actively pursuing projects in the Mid-County Basin, largely because that basin is in critical overdraft. So we're doing ASR in that basin, and we're also working with SoCal Food to do water transfers and exchanges to rest the wells and restore that basin. And as some of you know, we participate in the Santa Margarita Groundwater Agency as well. I think maybe the next slide is the slide that can talk briefly about potential projects in Santa Margarita. This crosses this is collaboration and also potential impact to your customers. This is the Santa Cruz Scotts Valley Intertie project, where this is Sims Road in La Madrona. The city received a grant to put in a pipeline to take water from our system to Scotts Valley and from Scotts Valley to our system, basically connecting the water systems from your water system all the way down through SoCal Creek Water District. So it's a really exciting opportunity. It's currently planned only for emergencies, but the idea would be that we would use it to passively recharge the basin in Scotts Valley Water District service area. So they could rest their wells and we could send water to them, and then they could send water back to us in an emergency. This project also showed up in the project and management actions of the Santa Margarita Groundwater Sustainability Plan as an opportunity also to do ASR. So not only could we transfer water back and forth between us and Scotts Valley, we could transfer water to and from your district if that was something that could happen in the future, and or we could do ASR in the portion of the basin within Santa Margarita. And I'm putting all these ideas out here just as ideas, not as if we're going down that path. So this project is largely in La Madrona Drive, and it's starting October of this year. It can take about a year to fully construct. And this one alone perhaps would not have an impact on yourself and your customers, but we can go to the next slide. This is the Mill Creek Pipeline Replacement Project. So Mill Creek Pipeline takes water from Black Lemon Reservoir all the way down to the Graham Hill Water Treatment Plant on Graham Hill Road. We're split the project into 3 pieces, and coming into construction in spring of this year is this portion here. It's at the Felton Booster Pump Station at East Cyane, and then coming into the Graham Hill Treatment Plant. We're taking the pipeline out of Pipeline Road, which it currently is, because it's very challenging in that very dynamic environment. But it will be in Graham Hill Road, which clearly will have an impact for customers in all of our areas. I do view this as a opportunity for collaboration when it comes to the Loch Lomond allotment that your district has with us. There's a lot of opportunity around moving water between Loch Lomond and the city, if it's treated water or raw water. So I think there's just a lot of opportunity. And then having this pipeline fully replaced will just make that more reliable. At least once a year, we're in Pipeline Road doing some sort of repair, so it's very challenging. I think I already spoke through the next slide, which was this first phase. The Fountain Dam hill phase that I talked about, and then the next one, we also have a project on Brackney or off of Brackney. This piece is on an old railroad right of way on a very significant slope. So we received FEMA funding to replace this piece. We're also doing this in the summer. It's all directional drilling, so the expectation is once they set up, the impact in the community won't be that great. We are in on these streets, Caledonian, I don't know how to pronounce that, Schaffer Road. So there's a lot of activity up in that area as we mobilize. We have a lot of customers in that area to make sure that their needs are met and understanding the project and how this can impact them. This is our Grand Hill Water Treatment Plant. I think there's two real opportunities here. One is improving the treatment capabilities of this plant. It was last updated in the 1980s, so treatment technology has changed and source water quality has changed. And we'll be able to treat more turbid water as it comes down the Santa Rosa River, and contaminants that we don't see currently like PFAS, but anticipated that if we would have the opportunity to treat them here. And this again is, I don't know if folks have visited the treatment plant, but it is right off Grimhill Road, and we don't anticipate a lot of impact on the road for the project, but with construction, there always will be. I guess what I want to say about the prior, and I have some flyers that will help describe the different projects and timelines and some of the meetings that we're holding. We do have a coordinated outreach effort for everybody on the La Madrona, folks on Grimhill Road. We're gonna try a virtual meeting for the Mill Creek Pipeline project because we want to cast the net really well. We get more than 6 people. I hope we do, but it's very challenging to reach out to people. Always open to hear your thoughts on how we can reach your customers and help them understand the projects. We're hoping also to have a website with daily updates and broadcast that information pretty broadly so people can see what is in front of them. I just brought this one up because we are working actively with staff from the district on how best to get the water from Loch Lomond to your agency. I think we've worked through a lot of records requests recently and waiting for the next step to see how we might be able to do that in the future. And I bring up water rights. The city applied for modifications to our water rights on the San Lorenzo River and Mill Creek, really for the purpose of facilitating the conjunctive use and collaboration of the water resources that we have. So currently there is basically restrictions on not taking it out of the watershed or only being able to serve it to certain entities, and the water rights, once they're modified, which we're hoping by the end of this calendar year, will really open up the opportunities to share water as needed throughout this entire region. So in summary, construction impacts summer of 2025 to 27. And I just listed out the areas and opportunities for collaboration where we are collaborating and hope to continue, particularly I think in the second to the last bullet, not necessarily just ASR in the Santa Margarita groundwater basin, but really how to share surface water to and from Scotts Valley and this region so we can rest and flow well. That's it.
Thank you, Heidi. Questions from the board? Jeff?
I'll pass for a moment.
Okay, Bob?
Questions and comments?
Yes, both. Yes, please.
I really appreciate you coming and seeing us. I'm fond of the saying, a new broom sweeps clean. And I'm hopeful that this was sort of the start of a new opportunity for us to collaborate. You probably recall that several years ago, 2021, maybe 2020, we were attempting to modify our water rights so we could, in fact, implement some of the things that were mentioned in the Santa Margarita groundwater report, or that were going to come. We were going to do that through a mitigated negative declaration. Santa Cruz effectively threatened us with a lawsuit and forced us to go into a lengthy EIR process, spending money that at the end of the day probably isn't going to result in a whole lot of change from what was in the negative declaration. I would hope that we would be able to, rather than have to go down expensive legal processes, to be able to sit down between the two districts and actually come to an agreement that would allow us to, in fact, start sharing water with Scotts Valley, either one of us, for the greater goal of trying to conserve groundwater. We could have been doing this now for 4 or 5 years, but we were blocked. I know that wasn't necessarily your decision. It was done under the previous manager, but it really puts at least in me, because I was here at the time, I don't know if anybody else was. Yeah, it really puts a really hard, it's hard to actually get into that without actually seeing some real progress on how we cannot have that kind of thing continue. Hopefully you'll be able to do that. I'm always optimistic about new people coming on board to be able to help out. But without some movement on that, I really, that was a hard blow to our district. I mean, a hammer blow to the heart.
So do you have any questions?
So I would like to know, so that's comment. Question is, are we at a point where we have numbers for raw and treated water out of Loch Lomond? Because without raw and treated water numbers, an analysis is really, you can't do one.
And by numbers, Bob, I know what you're asking for.
Cost per acre feet,
that's what I
cost per
wanted you to say.
gallon, cost per unit.
Yeah.
Whatever the unit is of measurement that we want to use.
Right.
But engaging in a labor intensive process to go through an analysis without having those numbers is worthless. As a board member, it's worthless to me.
Yeah.
Oh, I have 2 comments. One is, I also am hopeful that we can participate in all sorts of projects. I think not just the water supply augmentation work for both of us, but the hazard mitigation work. I mean, we have a similar list in Santa Cruz, and if there's a way that we can collaborate in some fashion around wildfire protection or hardening of our infrastructure, if there's something that we can do to pool funds, I think we should all be looking at that, because the more we can do together, I think the more. So yes, that's my hope and my goal. And if there's thoughts and ideas about how we can achieve that, I'd certainly be open to that. And then I'm going to defer to your staff on the other piece, because we have participated in a couple of meetings and shared a lot of data and information with your staff, but I don't know where the study is.
Yeah, I was going to say it'd be a good time to bring up the feasibility study we're currently involved in, where we have a consultant that's crunching the numbers exactly like Bob was mentioning, and City of Santa Cruz has been incredibly helpful in pouring data into.
Do we have numbers? Of what
we don't have
charge per.
We are in the process of looking into exactly what you're saying.
Process numbers. We've wanted numbers for 4 years.
Right. But what I hear Joel saying is,
when can we expect to get numbers? What time frame? I'm interested in results, not process. Let's put it that way.
I don't know off the top of my head when Carollo given us this. I don't know if you, John, are familiar with that. I know we're rounding the corner on that.
Let's let them go back, and this meeting or this presentation I take as being very positive. So let's let Joel work with Carollo.
Okay, and I have one more comment. So I'm a hard no on ASR for our district. I'm a hard no in contributing funds to it being done through a Santa Margarita project. if Scotts Valley and Santa Cruz want to collaborate in that, or there's some other way we can get to a more collaborative state, happy to have that conversation. But as of right now, I didn't hear anything about the EIR process or our water rights or anything like that. So it's a hard no for me.
Okay,
Can I make one follow-up comment on that?
Sure.
Just quickly, we do have we did an EIR that includes a portion of ASR over the Santa Margarita within the Scottsdale County area. It's at a programmatic level, but we have to do a lot more.
right, right. But you're not asking us to participate in that, so
No.
I don't think that that's for the purview of this board, since you're not asking us to participate in. it. So, okay. Jen? I'm sorry. I'm blanking. Alina. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming down here. And I am absolutely confident that we have a good working relationship with Santa Cruz. And I look forward to collaborating on our water use and our hazard mitigation. And just thank you again so much for your time.
Okay, right.
I agree. Thanks for coming up. Congratulations on the Intertie project. That's a major milestone. I think that'll do very well by the resource in the long run. And I look forward to navigating a number of opportunities over the next couple of years and making a lot more progress.
Okay. I will echo a lot of what Bob said as to the past relationship. I spent a lot of time reviewing the comments that we received on our, I believe it was the environmental impact statement that were from the city. I felt that from the city, those could have been more fruitfully resolved in a discussion. I felt often, in particular, because I was on the Santa Margarita agency for several years, that there was an adversarial relationship between us and the city. So the fact that you're here, I take that as a very positive step. So thank you for coming in. I hope that once we have a permanent general manager in place, because John at this point is interim, that a new general manager can begin working with you in a more collaborative basis than what I have not seen over the past few years. So thank you. Thank you.
Good to me.
But I do have a few questions on some of what you, on slide 5, you mentioned where to get new water supplies. I don't need the slide. Oh, where do you go get new water? It's not like you can go out to Amazon and say, hey, could you send us
Desal.
well, that's what I want to know. What are you thinking about? Where do you go get new water?
So on the list of alternatives that we're considering are desalination.
Okay.
Water transfers and exchanges, which is not new water. It's just kind of putting it into new storage. And recycled water. So the two options there would be partnering with the Pure Water Socal project to do
Right.
groundwater.
I'm aware of that one. Yeah. Okay.
And then we're also looking at direct potable.
Okay.
Treating the
To
sewage
drinking water.
to drinking water.
Yeah. Okay. And then on slide 16, the Loch Lomond water access. I was curious about that. What that statement refers to. That the one bullet.
It's really about ensuring the reliability of the pipeline. The pipeline is original, so it went in the 60s as well.
Right. Okay.
A lot of it's steel, so
right.
We share the same.
So it's rusting.
It's rusting.
Yeah.
So it's really about ensuring reliability to everybody that we serve.
Okay. All right. And my last question is more of a curiosity, because I walk on pipeline, and are you just abandoning in place?
We're gonna abandon place.
Thank you. Good. Good. Okay, all right. Let me go back out, let me go out to the public to see if we have any public, and then if the board has a following question, we can do that. Do any members of the public who are attending remotely have a question or comment for Heidi? I see none, so I will come back. Any at this end of the table, Brian? Alina?
Thank you.
Okay. Jeff? Bob?
I would just like to possibly amend one statement that you made, which is John is our interim general manager, true, but a very capable guy. And
Agreed.
I would like to see if John can actually start the process of a much better collaborative and working relationship. I think you already have at some level on some of these other items that we've talked about here today. I'm most interested in getting our water right so we can stop operating our district as three separate entities. We're able to operate it as one now because of the fire emergency, but that won't last forever.
Right.
And EIRs can go from now until forever, as Santa Cruz knows.
Right.
So I think there's a huge opportunity that we don't need to wait for a permanent general manager to start working on these issues. And I would really encourage
to that point, Bob, is that Heidi's already reached out a couple times in the short time that I've been here, and she's come up here and we've met in the office. So, I mean, she's already started that, and so kudos to her because she reached out first. So,
big thumbs up. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. Wrapping that up then, moving on to the next item, unfinished business, we have none. New business. The grant writer agreement. I believe you're taking that one, Chris?
And you take it.
Okay,
Yeah, so Dan,
lead on.
we have our grant writer RFP that went out as we were looking for a grant writer. Obviously, we want to get our grants back in order. We kind of didn't have a backlog anymore of ones that we'd applied to. And we foresee that there will be a lot of funding coming out with the LA wildfires, as well as just in recent years, there's been a lot of funding in general. So it would be great to have a grant writer because we don't really have capacity on staff. So we released the RFP and we got 8 responses. Those 8 responses, I have a little table that I can show you guys of the responses we got. Okay, so these are our 8 responses. Our chosen proposal was from Dudek, and the other kind of table or columns that we provide are cost for funding needs analysis, and then our score out of 100. It is an interesting thing to get a cost proposal that is the same across all these different entities, because it's not necessarily based on anything. You don't know what grants are going to come up. It's hard to get a standard cost. So we decided to have them provide a cost for funding needs analysis. So we requested that so it would be even across the board. And then based on that, they also provided their cost per hour and whatnot. And based on that, as well as the content of their the rest of their proposal, we scored it, and Dudek came out on top. And with that, we decided to move forward with Dudek, and we're bringing a agreement with them to the board.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board then? Bob?
Yeah, Chris, thanks very much for putting this together. It's one of the things I do like to see as part of the package, so we can get a sense of, okay, what were you looking at? How did you approach it? What were the pros and cons, that sort of thing of each one. I did go back and look at our original grant writer that was awarded in 2021 and to look at the relative hourly costs of the people I'm assuming are going to be doing the business, which is not Jane all the time, but the 2 grant writers. And from a cost point of view, with inflation the way it is, it seemed like a reasonable increase over what it used to be. I have two, one question, which I got to scroll down here to get to it. They had a number in here about doing a grant application, and it looked like they were charging. It looked like they were saying each grant application was going to cost $30,000 to do. Is that been our historical average? And the reason I'm asking that is that the previous grant writer, Susan Robinson, was sort of a small shop, right? And small shops have low overhead; they just get work done. Dump it up, dump it up. Dudek is a enormous shop. Enormous shops come with overhead processes, and all of that adds up to overhead cost. So my concern is, are we really looking at a $30,000 cost for a grant? And is that a reasonable cost given what we had historically and given what we see in the industry today?
Yeah, so the way I was also a little confused by the way that they put this scoring together or their costing together. You'll see that the funding needs analysis is included in that number. That's a one-time thing. So that's just going to be happen. And then project management, $9,000. It's not going to be $10,000 in project management per proposal. Right. I think what they've kind of said, like task 3 is the grant proposal development. I would imagine that is closer to the cost of a single grant development. And yeah, so I would imagine that would be somewhere closer to $10,000 for the development of a single grant application. There could also be other costs associated with that. But yeah, I see this as more of like a yearly total with each grant application costing maybe $10,000. We also have, I will note Jane is on the line.
I know.
And so she could probably shed more light on that. But yeah.
Okay. So again, if we move forward with this and, you have a strong recommendation, I would only ask that you watch that very closely because I work in consulting and I work with a lot of consultants, and you got to watch, particularly if it's T&M, which is what this is, you have to watch very closely on the overhead because that's where you're going to get nailed. I'm perfectly happy to spend money on writing grants. Our historical track record in ROI has been about 50 to 1. Last time I checked, we get a really good return on investment. I want to make sure that's not chewed up with overhead, right? Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. Good work on putting this together and putting that table together. Appreciate it.
Okay, Jeff?
So I was impressed with the professionalism of their proposal, the thoroughness, and particularly the information on how they go out and locate these grants. I thought was quite useful. So,
okay, all right, Alina.
Yeah, I noticed in our last presentation, they actually did one of the maps on there, so that was kind of that was neat. Yeah.
Did one of them map.
Yeah, it was at the bottom. So for Santa Cruz Water. So yeah, it was just kind of reinforcing that our people around us are using that along with the references that came with it. I really like the line that they said that they had engaged with federal elected officials on behalf of our clients before. And that they would do that if we asked them to. And I think like with our consolidations that are going on right now, like we need to be going for bigger funding. And I think that them having that experience, I think that's really critical. But I was really impressed with the application. So yeah.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay, Brian?
I'm really excited that this opportunity is here. I strongly encourage proceeding with it. I think that maybe just 3 suggestions. One is that often when preparing grant applications, there's a question of what our overhead will be. And perhaps that's a fixed amount or percentage amount of a project. I found that there's often an opportunity to separate project management, engineering, construction oversight, construction coordination from that overhead and call that a project cost and embed that along with the, whether it's a consultant for design or construction contract. So the total project cost is our time plus the whatever bid we're putting in or estimate we're putting in, and then admin would be on top of that. So that's a way to help bring in additional grant funds. Another is that in the region there are a few collaboratives like the Santa Cruz Integrated Water Management Group through the Community Foundation will do pooled grants. Contributing our projects to those pooled grants is an efficient way to kind of hitch our wagon to someone else's horse. And I would encourage you to request that DUDEC engage in those collaboratives because then they'll be able to track those opportunities. And then my last comment is that the number of hours required and associated cost is likely to vary considerably grant to grant, where some will be very simple, really, especially these collaborative ones. They should be quite, whereas others could be 50-page nightmares. And so just I would encourage you to have a sense of what the application is and its complexity and track the hours and just make sure things are lining up so that we're not playing the same regardless. 30,000 might be reasonable for a super complicated one, but for a lot of them, it should be substantially less than that, I think. But thank you for moving this forward. That's great.
Okay. I appreciated the table that you put together. Put that up on the screen for us to be able to show us. Here's everybody. Here are the scores. Here's how we rank those. I also liked how you put a metric out there to get comparative pricing on them. That was wise. So good job with that one. Yeah. And being able to say it's give us a cost for this what was it? The initial
funding needs analysis.
The funding needs analysis. Yes. So good. I think I read somewhere that's anticipated in a 2-month time frame.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that come back to the board.
Funding needs analysis once it's completed.
Once it's completed, yeah. Yeah. So show us what they think we have as far as needs, just so that we have that as one more checkpoint, and we might have input into that then. So at a future board meeting, we talk about. I'm confused. We talk about a grant costing maybe 30,000, but their whole contract is for 30,000 that we're issuing. So
the contract is for 50,000.
Okay. I'm sorry, for 50,000. Yeah. So if a grant is 30,000, then maybe we get one grant or a grant and a half. Is that
a lot of these costs included in the table are one-time costs?
Right.
They are not going to be per grant.
Okay.
I expect this contract to last a year.
Okay. All right. So
multiple grant applications.
Okay. So a year's worth of time that you are anticipating that we will be able to work with DUDEC based on what they put in front of us. Okay. All right. And my last question is, I see exceptions to the sample agreement in there. Did legal review that?
Yeah. So we've gone back and forth and we figured it all out.
All right. Okay. And legal said okay. All right. Good. I'm good with that then. I'll go out to the public now. Any members of the public have questions or comment on this grant writer proposal? I see none. So I will go ahead and make the motion that the board authorizes the interim general manager to execute an agreement with DUDEC to provide grant writing services for an amount not to exceed 50,000.
Second it.
Okay.
Okay, you
Yeah.
ready? Okay.
Yes.
President Smolley,
Yes.
Vice President Lang,
Yes.
Director Hill,
Yes.
Director Cole,
Yes.
Director Largate.
Yes.
All right, we have unanimous.
Good job.
Okay. Yes. Moving on then. The Highway 9 Bridges Contract Award. I understand you're leading that one, Joel.
Yeah.
Have at it.
Right. Yeah, so the district was contacted by Caltrans, letting us know of their upcoming projects to replace some bridges in North Boulder Creek. One being a bridge across the San Lorenzo River, the other one being a little farther north across King Creek. This will be a multiple stage project so that obviously water service across the bridge is not interrupted, and also at least one lane of traffic across the bridge is not interrupted. So plenty of stages here, but we put out this request for bids for phase 1 of our project, which will include just putting a temporary pipeline across the bridge and abandoning our existing pipeline. We got 3 bidders for this work, which are shown on our memo here. The lowest bid coming in from Corcus Construction to the tune of $400,400. I'll first address because it's was brought to our attention, and obviously we were concerned as well about the firm's lack of experience. They were founded in 2023, so have not been on the playing field for too long. We did work it by looking into their references that they listed. We only heard it back from 2 of them. It's not, a guarantee that you'll get a call or an email back, but we did get very good reviews from James Lai, who's an employee at Alameda County Public Works, who has been involved with multiple projects of theirs. Says they performed well on each, that Corcus is very professional, competent, and that he would highly recommends them. And another positive reference from Mike Cortez, who's engineering manager at Las Salinas Valley Sanitary District up in Marin County. He let me know that Corcus has done quality work for them, that they have a greater engineering knowledge than most of the contractors they've worked with. A couple of their management have engineering degrees, which is not required to be a contractor, but definitely a nice plus. And I asked Mike about how they performed given environmental regulations. The specific project of theirs was adjacent to the Las Colinas Creek. And he said that they were very diligent about those and the stormwater pollution prevention, and that they were on their game regarding that. So I think it'd be in our best interest to do with Corcus for the construction of phase 1.
Okay, all right. Questions then? Brian?
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
With the information.
Lena?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you for going and checking the references and making sure, because there's quite a different price difference in that.
Okay. Good.
So Joel, you addressed the fact that you check references and stuff, but I'm still somewhat disturbed by the really broad range of the bids here in terms of dollars.
Yeah, but when we opened, we were also surprised.
Are we confident that they actually bid on it correctly, that there isn't some huge
yeah, I mean, looking through their individual bid items, it doesn't seem like anything was overlooked. And I think I'll add some context that we were especially surprised by the bid that came in from the highest bidder from Disney Construction. In my professional opinion, I think that was probably caused by some oversight on their part, overestimating things that were way beyond what I think a reasonable price would be. I think most notably, I noticed their bid item on the demolition work for demoing the old pipeline. It's not a lot of work. It's abandoning in place and then removing what's on the bridge.
Yeah.
And their bid for even just that one item was astronomically high. So
just looking at the range of prices there, I looked at that and I said, somebody's screwed up here, and I hope it's the guy at the high end.
Right.
So
that's it. Okay, Bob?
Yeah, I had the same question. And when I saw that, I immediately started doing some web searches on them to see what I could come up with. It looks like these guys all came from Ranger Pipelines. And
look at their resumes
in Ireland. Well, and so I did a web search on Ranger Pipelines to see what's there. Because, normally when people leave in Mass, you see that in tech. You don't see it in construction that often, I don't think. I don't know.
Right.
So it looks like these guys are trying to make a name for themselves. I think they're being really aggressive on the bid, which is great. As long as they got some kind of reference check, that's good. I'm always enthusiastic about new people coming to play. We've had kind of, same kind of thing over and over again. It'd be nice to get some additional competition going because some of these bids are coming in way higher than I think we would like to see. So I was really happy about that. My only thing I would suggest is that we keep a really close eye on any potential change order or activity. Because it is so low, I'm just, I'm just naturally a little concerned about it. But I'll tell you something, if they do a really good job and all that, I certainly hope they come back and bid on some of the other things that we have.
They will be back if we let them back.
Yes. Well, I hope they at least come back to bid and all that, but I hope they do a real good job. I mean, I'm going to support it just because I think we're going to.
We need some new vendors.
Now, the only other question I had was on finance. So we talk about we're going to increase the capital budget by $400,000. Where does that come from exactly?
We didn't spend it.
What was it?
We didn't spend it the previous year, correct?
Yeah, this is the project foresaw, and we had at least Heather might be able to.
So, I mean, we basically have a number that's carrying over and then we're adding another 400 grand to it. I mean, the money shifting around is fungible, obviously. So, how things get shifted around. But Heather, I think you're showing there's like $11 million in unrestricted funds right now in our account.
About that, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have funds to cover this. I sometimes like to see when we make a change like that we kind of bring in a set of numbers that go along with that, along with your presentation. But that's sort of a refinement thing, going forward, just to make things go faster so I don't have to ask the question. So, okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. I was suspicious of this bid. Same reasons both Bob and Jeff were, the disparity between the three. Corcus submitted a bid to us on the phase 1 consolidations project. They were the low bidder for about a week until they saw that they made an error, and then they were the high bidder on the project. So for a project of that size, I was glad that we didn't have to then consider them further. But on a project of this size, I would like to see what they've done. Yes, they're a group of individuals that came from Ranger Pipelines. I've managed several projects while I was working, and Ranger was on the job. I liked Ranger Pipelines.
Oh, gotcha.
They did good work.
Excellent.
So the fact that there's a spinoff of Ranger staff and what you've said in checking references, okay, maybe we will have somebody good here.
Right.
I'm glad you said that one. That's
But
good. Yeah.
I would request for at least the first few weeks or months out there, can we have somebody out there, eyes on, nearly full time, if not that? One, I have you pointed out the concern for the environmental aspects. They're working right over the creek. The reference text that you did that said, yes, they are on top of it for environmental. I appreciate that comment. I'd like us to verify that, because the fact that we've seen them now twice bidding on projects, I would like us to have the comfortability of eyes on and one of your staff saying, yes, they're on top of it.
Yeah, so we'll be doing the construction inspecting in-house, so that'll be either myself or our other staff members.
Okay.
At least once a day, and I agree with you that especially at the beginning of this project.
Especially at the beginning, until you get that sense of comfortability. Yeah, these guys know what they're doing. Then you can.
I agree with that.
Okay, good. Okay. Okay, I think that's my take on it. All right. But they're a team from Ranger. Most of Ranger's other staff are all also Irish immigrants. There is something in the pipeline trades, in particular in San Francisco, that's part of what we jokingly call the Irish Mafia. I don't know why, but
I was curious about that.
they're not the only company that's has quite a number of Irish that are doing pipeline. Yeah. So with that, does any members of the public have questions or comments on this? Seeing none, I'll move that the board directs the interim general.
I just have one quick comment.
Okay.
Which is Joel and presumably Garrett was involved in this. Well, you guys are doing a great job in these kinds of things. I like the fact that we're bringing this information in. You're answering all the questions. Big thumbs up. Thank you. Keep doing it.
Thanks.
Okay. Move that the board directs the interim general manager to execute the notice of award for phase one of the CA9 Bridges water main replacement project to Corcus Construction in an amount not to exceed 400,000. And I move that the board adopt resolution, a resolution amending fiscal year 2024-25 capital improvement budget by 400,000.
Second.
All right.
Okay.
President Smolley,
Yes.
Vice President Lang,
Yes.
Director Hill,
Yes.
Director Holt,
Yes.
and Director Largate.
Yes.
All right, passes unanimously.
Okay. We can now move on to the consent agenda. Does anybody want to pull any items from the consent agenda for discussion? Seeing none, I take that as approved as is. District reports, we have none. We do have 2 written communications that I assume everybody on the board has reviewed.
We do have an operation status report. Just FYI.
Did I miss that?
There is one operations item.
In the interest of getting back to closed session, though, I'm going to pose any questions in writing.
It's part of the consent agenda, the operations quarterly status report.
We don't normally put status reports in consent.
Okay.
But in the interest of.
But you'll submit yours so that we can.
Submit, yeah. I want to get back in the closed session. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. So with that, I think we can adjourn.
Do we have any?
Or we can pause on this open session of the meeting. Do any members of the public have a comment on what we've said? Otherwise, I will inform the public that the board is going back into our closed session to reconvene that when we do conclude that. And my estimate is probably by 8:30 at the outside that we would conclude. We will come back to report whether we are taking any action from that. So with that, thank you, staff.
Back at 8:30.
I'd like to reconvene the open session of the board meeting and report that there are no reportable actions taken during the closed session. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, CTV.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks. Have a good evening.